Hey there and welcome back to another Unreal tutorial. So in this video I think what we'll be doing is reaching a stage where we'll be wrapping up the project. So whereas in the past I've been able to keep everything fairly specific to a topic, I think now we're going to have to start merging certain videos together to make them long enough to be worthwhile having an entire video on it. So what we're doing today is going back to the player projectiles and the enemy setup for collision and damage, because at the moment we have this going on where if we shoot the projectiles, what happens is they just hit the enemy. There's nothing going on to remove the projectiles or damage the enemy ships. So we'll go into that today. So if we go to the blueprints, we will go to our projectiles and we'll find our BP projectile player primary. If you're noticing the layout is looking different, I've just upgraded to 4.17, so we've got the color-coded tabs up here now, and sometimes you get weird error messages like this, so we'll just remove that. Go into the open full blueprint editor, and this still seems a bit weird. Sorry, so what we wanted was the BP underscore projectile player base, not the primary. So we want to drive all of the collision data off of the base blueprint. That way, any of these projectiles that we use will obviously have the same collision setup as well. So really all we want to do is when the projectile hits something, we have all of this set up over here, the collision setup. So it is of type vehicle, so that we can just make sure that other vehicles are ignored, as well as the player pawn is ignored. And then we'll do a hit check to a block setup and everything else so that we hit the walls, the enemies, and anything else in the game that we might want to destroy a projectile. And what we want to do is with the projectile selected, we'll go down and we will add an on component begin overlap. And quite simply, we just want to pull off of here, and when we hit something, we will apply damage to this immediately and then destroy the projectile. And I'll explain the logic behind this in just a moment. And we'll put the damage in. So the damage is going to be the exposed variable, and this is what we will be able to edit. And so each of the child blueprints will have a different damage value, and all we want to do is plug in the other actor to be the damaged actor. And actually, just recalling what I said, I think we've got this set up the wrong way because we're doing a overlap check, which is probably the correct thing to do. I think because we have this set to block everything rather than overlap, this probably won't work. So I'll do a quick check. Okay, yeah, so you can see what's happening there is we're kind of stopping the ships at some points and the projectiles are not being removed. In fact, that's probably because even if that would work, we haven't done this. So we'll drag off of here and do a destroy actor as well and just double check. But I think this is still not going to work. Okay, so the reason for that is a slight oversight when I was setting this up originally. All we want to do is anything that is set to block over here, we just want to change this to overlap. Because we're doing an overlap check, which the reason I've chosen that is because, as you saw there, if you hit the enemies from the side with the block, you kind of push them out of the way a little bit, and that's probably not the kind of response you want. You don't want the projectiles to be quite that strong or look quite that heavy. So to make sure that they simply do a check and then get destroyed, you want to use an overlap rather than the other option would be to do an on component hit. Because further up here in the collisions, what we have is a generate overlap event and a generate hit event. So the overlap will be checking against this, and the hit will be checking against the block. So just a slight oversight on my behalf there. And the other thing is we can also make sure that we ignore the visibility and the camera. So we won't do any line traces, and we don't want the camera to get in the way. Anything like spring arms and stuff like that as well. So we can set all of this just to overlap. So now with those changes, if we hit a few enemy ships, we should see the projectiles are now just disappearing. So that's perfect. So they're being destroyed and they're passing damage in. Now the other thing you've probably realized is that if this hits a wall or some other arbitrary object, that it will apply damage to the object, and that's fine. The reason I've done this is otherwise we're going to have to do certain casts, so we'll need to cast to a type of BP enemy every time that we hit this. And realistically, when you're doing a cast, they can be quite heavy, and especially if you're doing one every single time that projectile hits, it's actually cheaper to just assume that you're going to apply damage to a wall in things. And at worst, that's just kind of a lost call. Obviously, we're not going to set any damage effects up on the walls, so nothing's going to be destroyed or taken away. But it's just cheaper to apply damage to something than it is to cast on the off chance that you're not hitting an enemy. So that's why we've done this, and it just works out a tiny bit cheaper. And in fact, the other thing that we can do is because we have imported all of this from the beginning of the project, we can spawn the emitter at this point as well. So if we spawn emitter at location, we can get the actor's location, so we'll find out where we hit, and we can just use the p_pixel explosion. So now when we hit something, we'll just see a nice little effect coming off of here as well. So you can play about with these effects if you wanted to. It's just really to highlight that something's been collided with, and it just makes the game feel a little bit better. So we're starting to get some effects in now as well. So that is the projectile done. And just to wrap this up really, because it's such a simple function that we're going to make, we're going to go to the BP enemy base. And inside of here, we want to get an event any damage function. And off of here, we want to set the current health, or just health, so set health. We'll clamp this first of all. So we'll do a clamp by float to make sure that we don't get any weird results coming back, so making the health higher or lower than the maximum should be. And that will just be a float minus a float. We'll set the minimum to be 0, we don't want this to go below 0, and we don't want it to go above the maximum health that we set at the beginning of the blueprint. And then what we want to do is we want to get the health value, and we want to take away from that the damage which is being passed in. So that will clamp the return value here between 0 and our max health. That will then set health here. And off of this, what we want to do again is a branch. And we'll find out the value that happened there. We'll find out that has now made the health less than or equal to 0. And of course, this should only ever be equal to 0 at the very minimum. But just to be double safe, we will make that less than or equal to. If that is, then that means the enemy has died. So again, we're going to come off of here. We'll spawn another emitter at location. This time we'll use the P pixel explosion player. We will get the actor location, and then when that's been done, we will destroy the actor. So I think we're probably going to come back at some point and add a few more things in between this, like a sound effect. We need to update the score, but at the moment I just wanted to get the enemy to leave the screen, just to show that everything's working. I think we've given them some default health values, and there we go, yeah, we're getting them to explode when we hit them. And then the ideal thing is that we're going to make another function somewhere in between here, and then when we destroy this, which will pass information up to the game mode to say that an enemy's been removed, it's worth X amount of points, and then we'll update the HUD that we implemented previously. But at the moment, I just wanted to make sure that we're getting this coming a little bit further along, so that we have enemies coming in and enemies being removed at the very least. Now at least we know the collision and everything's working, and the particle effects and things are making it look a little bit better. Okay, so I will leave this one here for today. As always though, if you've enjoyed this or found the video useful, then please do leave a like and share the video around. If you wanted to be kept up to date with the latest content on the channel, then press the button at the top of the screen to subscribe. As ever though, thanks for watching, and I will see you all next time.